Hi, this is Kevin Becka from Pro Tools Expert, and welcome to my review of the new Spectre plugin from Wavesfactory. This plugin is a very interesting take on adding distortion to anything you'd like, any kind of audio track, including mid-side, stereo, or mono, the whole mix, one thing or another, and it is structured in a way that you can be very picky about what part of your signal gets distorted. But let's just get into this interface real quick before we get into some specific examples. Up here, there's a hidden menu here. If you click on the Spectre logo, you can go to a menu that has information about the company. You can visit their website. You can change the background, which personally, I like it better small. I think it takes up too much space this way, so I'm going to hide that. And then you can also read the manual. It's a quick path to the manual, and you can open a presets folder. So it's a very handy little sub-menu there. Then you've got a 5-band EQ. So the 3 mid bands are bell shape, and the outer bands are shelving. You can bypass them with this little button. So for instance, if you had something going on and you wanted to see what it sounds like without it, you can quickly bypass the band. And you get down to the gain controls, and this is boost only. You notice you can't go south on this. You can only go north. So how this plugin works is it takes the difference between the dry signal and then what you're pushing up here on these various bands, and which is being sent to these algorithms that I'll show you in a minute. And then you have the ability to blend in the two at the end of the chain. Down here you have your other controls, so you can actually change the gain and the frequency from here, or you can drag the box and change the Q control and that kind of stuff. And then you have input controls, so if you want to drive your algorithm harder, you can boost it up to 12 dB or take it back if your signal is really hot. You can also then change your output up to 12 dB up and down. And then you have the mix control, which is a blend for the parallel signals as they come together at the end of the chain. You have 3 quality controls here. You have normal, good, and best, and this changes how the plugin is applying oversampling. Then you have the color settings, and this is where all the action happens. So you have these various ways of distorting your signal, and then you have this last one, which is clean, which means you're not distorting the signal, you're just using this as a basic boost only EQ. You have presets. You can go in and save presets from this menu, or you can go in as you would on any plugin and save settings as and store presets this way. Then you have the mode, which is subtle, medium, or aggressive, and this really changes the quality of the distortion. And then the processing, this is my favorite part of this plugin, is the processing can be stereo, it can be left or right in the stereo picture, or it can be mid and side. And you're going to see in a minute, I use this left and right to really enhance a drum room mic that I'm using with a microphone where I can record both the front and the back of the mic. So here's Spectre across a vocal, and what I want you to hear is how it changes not only the sound of the vocal but also how it hits the reverb. And that's one of the key to making your vocal sit better in the track. So how I've got Spectre set up with is just a little bit of boost at about 4.5K, a little bit of boost at 1K, and I've got a shelf out here at starting at 2K, so it's a pretty long shelf, but once again it's only 2.25 dB, and then down here for a little fullness I'm adding a little over a dB at about 200, which is perfect for this vocalist. I've got Spectre set up on the track with a trim plugin so that I can equalize the volume so you can hear it with and without. It's pretty much the same volume. Then I've set the quality to best, so that's maximum oversampling. I'm using this warm tube, which for me is one of the better ones. I like tube, I like warm tube, and solid is great too. These down here are more harsh, and I would use it maybe on an instrument or a guitar, maybe a harmonica, something like that. And so I've got that set up on warm tube. Mode is subtle, so I'm just adding a little bit of it. And I'm using it in stereo. For starters, I want you to hear the vocal without Spectre. Now the vocal was cut with an SM7 microphone through a Martech MSS10 preamp and then through a Blue Stripe 1176 compressor. So check it out.
Days are hard, nights and long, the bed's too big with you gone.
And and with Spectre.
Days are hard, nights and long, the bed's too big with you gone.
Now you can see and hear that it brings up the sibilance a little bit. So what I've done is written a little automation in there to take care of that. So this is with Spectre again, with a little bit of help. You're going to see this fader move pretty quickly here. So check it out.
Days are hard, nights and long, the bed's too big with you gone.
Next, I want you to hear how this hits the reverb differently. So I'm going to let it run and then take it in and out as it goes.
Days are hard, nights and long, the bed's too big with you gone. Flashes of light, flashes of your face that keep me warm at night.
This is with Spectre.
Days are hard, nights and long, the bed's too big with you gone.
So what's happening is when you send it through the Spectre, it takes the curtain off the vocal, sounds better overall, but also hits the reverb better. This is the EMT 140 from Universal Audio 2, which is one of my favorite reverb plugins. And it makes a palpable difference in the quality of the vocal track. So try that for yourself. Download the demo and experiment with it. And you can take these settings or whatever works for you. But just a little bit will really help on a vocal track or even a guitar track, if for that matter, help stick out in the mix a little bit more. Next, we're going to hear Spectre across a snare drum. And I'll often do this to make the snare drum just sit in the mix a little bit better. I'll send it to a decapitator plugin or some kind of distortion plugin like I do my vocal. But this time I've got Spectre on an aux bus on a separate aux track, so I can blend it with faders instead of doing it within the plugin. Either way works great. So for starters, let's hear the drum without Spectre. It's nice and tight, and now we're going to hear it with Spectre. So just that little bit of distortion kind of spreads it out a little bit and gives it not so much of a point. Now we're going to hear Spectre on the drum kit in its entirety across the snare drum, and I'm going to bring the snare in and out. You're going to hear how it makes it cut through the cymbals a little bit better and also brings a little more excitement to the point of the snare when I have Spectre in. So first it's going to be without Spectre. Check it out. And there you have it. So it's pretty subtle, but it's definitely there. Spectre adds a little bit more excitement to that snare drum in the track, especially when it's trying to cut through cymbals. Last stop on our Wavesfactory Spectre review is on a drum kit mic'd in Glyn John style, this time with 3 251s and an extra room mic, which is a Lewitt 640 TS. The Lewitt has a front and a back capsule output, and then you can use this really cool polarizer plugin to blend in the front and the back. And what I've done here is, if you can see over here on the right, I've used processing on the right side only, which is the back side of the mic. So it came up with some really interesting results. But first, let's start with what I did with Spectre on the side mic, which is the first track. Added a little bit of top shelf, colored it with some tape, put the quality to normal, mode to medium. Then next I mixed it up here a little bit, added some 57 hertz at about 1.5 dB, warm tube this time, in medium mode, and then added a little bit of bubble on the top at about 5K to brighten that up, that kick drum up a little bit. And then on the overhead, I just added some top on a tape color, normal quality, subtle, and processed those all in stereo. This last one, you will hear in a second, where I took the polarizer plugin and just blended it in, which is kind of cool. So here you go. This is with Spectre, without Spectre. So this last part of this application is how the Spectre works with the polarizer plugin from Lewitt. And what's cool about it is I can accent, the front or the back, or I can change this polar pattern. You can see it's 0 degrees on top and 180 at the bottom. So what I've chosen to do is the right track here is the rear, and I've chosen to process the right with the Spectre. There's really no way to govern this volume very well like I did in the other applications, but you'll hear the difference in how the quality changes, and I'll tuck this in here in a minute. So check it out. So it's kind of all over the map, but there is a sweet spot I found that I really like, and so check it out and hear it all together now. So the sweet spot for me is when you have just a little bit of this back lobe in here, and you can bring in that distortion that's supplied here by the Spectre plugin, and it just adds a really nice component to the already cool mix of this drum kit. My experience with Spectre has been fantastic. I highly recommend it. It is a nice way to add distortion in a very subtle way or in a very crazy way like we just did. And you should go to the website and download the demo and check it out for yourself. Thank you for viewing this review, and we'll see you soon.